Way back in 1872, a Scottish author named George MacDonald published a book that, on the surface, seems like a pretty standard kid's story. You've got a princess, a brave young miner, and of course, a bunch of nasty goblins living under a mountain. It's got all the makings of a classic fairy tale.
But is that really all that's going on here? Well, if you look just a little bit closer, you'll find that underneath this simple adventure story, there's this incredibly deep and complex allegory about faith, about doubt, and really about the nature of reality itself. And it's an allegory that would end up laying the groundwork for some of the biggest fantasy stories ever written. So, to really get into the deep stuff, we first have to meet the cast. The whole story really revolves around two young heroes and a whole kingdom of villains living right under their feet.
Right off the bat, MacDonald sets up his main conflict right in his characters. You have Princess Irene, who lives up in the light of the castle. She's all about intuition. She's open to things she can't necessarily see. You could call her a child of faith. And then you have Kirti. He's a practical miner boy who literally works in the dark. He's a child of empiricism. He only trusts what he can see and touch and prove. They are polar opposites from the get-go.
And then, of course, you've got your villains. The goblins are actually former humans who've been twisted over generations of living underground, away from the sun. They're materialistic, grotesque, and they have a major grudge against the sun people living up above. Their big evil plan is to kidnap the princess, and their only physical weakness is, well, it's kind of weird. They have extremely sensitive feet.
Now, what's so cool about this story is that the setting isn't just a backdrop. The entire landscape, the mountain, the castle, the mines, it's all one giant piece of symbolism.
The story's whole dual nature is mirrored perfectly in where it all takes place. The world above ground is all sunlight and nature. It represents the spiritual realm, a world of faith and things that are seen in the light. But the world below, where the goblins hide out, is total darkness, cold stone and caves. It stands for a purely material existence, a place of skepticism and things that are hidden away.
So, you might be asking, how does our hero navigate this world of opposites? Well, this is where MacDonald introduces the absolute theological core of the novel, and it comes in the form of a beautiful, mysterious guide for the princess.
So, Princess Irene discovers this secret room in the castle, and in it lives her great-great-grandmother. She's this ancient, wise, and beautiful figure. But here's the catch. Only Irene can see her. It becomes pretty clear pretty fast that she's more than just an old relative. She's a symbol for divine love, maybe even God, a source of wisdom and faith that not just anyone can perceive.
This grandmother gives Irene an incredible gift, a magical ball of thread that's spun from spider webs. Now, this thread is so fine that it's completely invisible, but at the same time, it's totally unbreakable. One end gets attached to Irene's ring, and the other end is held by the grandmother.
And listen to the instructions she gives. This thread, right here, is the story's most powerful metaphor. It's a guide you can't see. Its existence can't be proven by sight. You can only know it's there by touch and by trust. It is, basically, faith itself, made tangible, a guide you have to believe in and follow, even when you have no idea where it's leading you.
And this brings us to the novel's real battle. It's not just Irene and Kirti fighting goblins, it's a clash of entire world views, a philosophical debate that's played out by these two kids.
This is just perfectly shown in one key scene. Irene leads Kirti to her grandmother's room. To her, the grandmother is as real as anything, sitting right there in her chair. But when she asks Kirti if he sees her, his response is so blunt, "I don't see any grandmother." He is standing in the exact same spot, looking at the exact same space, but his worldview, his need for hard evidence, literally prevents him from seeing what is plain as day to Irene.
And with that one line, Irene just lays out the story's central message. For MacDonald, the author, some truths, especially spiritual ones, aren't things you can find with proof. They're found through faith. Sometimes you just have to be willing to believe without seeing. So why does a 150-year-old fairy tale matter so much today? Well, because its ideas didn't just stay inside this one book. Oh no. They basically exploded, creating the very blueprint for modern fantasy as we know it. I mean, you can draw a fascinatingly straight line here. In 1872, MacDonald pioneers these ideas. Decades later, a huge admirer of his work, J.R.R. Tolkien, publishes The Hobbit, and it is no coincidence that his goblins under the Misty Mountains are direct descendants of MacDonald's.
Then, C.S. Lewis, who famously called MacDonald his master, goes on to build the entire world of Narnia on the foundation of Christian allegory that MacDonald really perfected.
So what was the magic formula here? Well, that classic idea of the goblin living under a mountain, that really starts with MacDonald. But his real genius was blending that kind of magical adventure with these huge philosophical ideas. His innovation was creating what we now call a secondary world, a whole fantasy realm that operated on its own spiritual and physical laws. This let him explore the fight between faith and doubt not as a lecture, but as part of the very fabric of the world. And that idea, wow, that changed everything.
It really gets you thinking, doesn't it? When you think about the mines of Moria, or the land of Narnia, how much of the epic fantasy that defines our culture actually owes its soul to a little princess, a miner boy, and an invisible thread of faith?
This is for entertainment and educational purposes only.